Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. Isis, Escape from Transylvania. The Goddess Next Door and John Haynes must escape a horde of vampires on the hunt in this horror-filled Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Escape from Transylvania in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Marvel Comics recently announced that they are getting ready to outsource the publication of middle grade comics featuring their popular characters like Spider Man, the Avengers, and Black Panther to IDW Publishing. And this announcement that they are going to outsource the publication of middle grade comics to IDW Publishing is a very troubling sign for Marvel Comics. As a publishing professional with almost 20 years of experience in the publishing industry, I can tell you that when a publisher is outsourcing, that's a sign that there's something troubling as related to the balance sheet at Marvel Comics. And when you take a critical look at Marvel Comics is supposed to be the industry leader as related to publishing comics. And as an industry leader, they shouldn't have to go and outsource publication of their most popular characters to a competing publisher. If they wanted to publish middle grade comic books towards younger readers, you would think they would be able to do this in house. And the reason why you would want to believe that they would be able to do this in house is because you would believe that they would have a group of competent editors who could come together to develop a subsidiary brand in the Marvel Publishing Division. Because back in the 1980s, that's what Marvel did as related to its Star line of comics, and the Marvel Star line, which featured Spider-Ham, Alf, and many other licensed characters, were worked on by a senior executive editor who supervised a group of editors and supervised a group of artists and writers who worked together on these books, which were designed to sell to younger and middle grade readers back in the 80s. And with Marvel being a subsidiary of Disney, you would think they would be able to go out here and do this in house and save themselves some costs. Now, when I take a critical look at Marvel once again, you would think they would be able to do that with the infrastructure they established for Marvel Rising. Now, Marvel Rising was supposed to be a middle grade series that was designed to sell to tweens and teens and younger readers. And I look at this decision to license and outsource these Marvel characters to IDW Publishing and create middle grade comics, and it really is a head scratcher to me. And the reason why it's a head scratcher to me is because you're licensing comic book product to be sold to compete against your own Marvel Rising product. So you have two different products from two different companies competing with each other and encroaching on each other's marketplace. This clearly shows me that, as it related to the editors and senior executives at Marvel, that there is really no sense of leadership and no sense of direction, because no smart publisher out here is going to go and license and outsource the publication of their characters to compete with a product you already have in the marketplace. That takes away from your own profits, and it also takes away from your own market share. So I look at that decision, and it's clear to me that this is a decision based in desperation. And the reason why I believe it's based in desperation is because Marvel Comics, as I see it as a publisher, knows that its bottom line is not being met as related to profits. Because when you take a critical look at Marvel's catalog right now, they have over 80 titles in their catalog. That's a catalog that's just bloated and oversized, and it's not one that's going to be profitable for a publisher, because in the publishing world of trade books, 90% of all books fail, and it's the 10% of books that succeed that pay for the losses of the 90%. However, at Marvel, the failure rate has been 99 to 100% over the last 2 to 3 years. And with the failure rate of many of these books being 99 to 100%, Marvel Comics is hemorrhaging money on losses for many of these books that they overship to comic book stores, and many of these books that just don't really return on the investment overall. Now, this is one of the reasons why I believe they are outsourcing their books to IDW, is that they know that they're losing lots of money on these publications, and they need to get this money from this license in order to keep Marvel Comics afloat. They know that if they have this license, they have a revenue stream of cash coming into Marvel Comics to cover the losses for many of the books that many comic shops refuse to order or low order, and they also have a cash flow to pay for many of the books that are printed and overshipped. And this is one of the tricks with the overshipping. That's the problem. These books that they print as related to overshipping, these books cost money, and these books are costing Marvel a lot of money, and they need to cover those costs. So this is why they go out here and outsource their publications and their properties to IDW, is to stop the hemorrhaging of money that they have going on right now. Now, as it relates to Marvel Comics Big Picture, Marvel Comics Big Picture is one of a company that's in crisis. And as a publisher, they are in serious crisis because they have this great big catalog of great properties, but none of those properties are proving profitable at comic shops, and they're not proving profitable from a publisher's perspective. In order for a publisher to have a profitable catalog, again, they have to have that 10% of books that are selling in large numbers, and many of Marvel's most popular and iconic characters who used to be their top sellers, like your Wolverine, like your Spider-Man, like your Incredible Hulk, they are not pulling their 1980s numbers, where these books were selling 500,000, 300,000, 400,000, or even 250,000, and many of their mid-tier characters from the 1980s, like Captain America and Iron Man, they're not even pulling the 250,000 sales they used to pull back in the 1980s. And it was back then that those high-grade books like X-Men, Spider-Man, the Hulk, that paid for the losses on lower-tier books and experimental books like your NFL Super Pros. But we don't have any of those books making money anymore, and this is why we have your Marvel outsourcing their publications to IDW Publications. And again, they are doing this as a way to bring revenue into Marvel Comics, and they're also doing it as a cost-cutting measure at Marvel Comics, because when you have freelancers working for you directly, what they do is you not only have to pay them for their freelance writing rates, or as an artist you're paying for their page rates, but you also have to pay those people royalties. But when you have them working for a subcontractor, that freelance work becomes work for hire, and once it becomes work for hire, these people don't have to be paid any royalties. So as a subcontractor, what they're doing is using the IDW publications as a way to lowball already low rates. And this is an example of the same type of behavior that went on at Charlton Comics, which was notorious for participating in all sorts of stunts and low things to keep comics produced at an extremely low rate. Charlton back in the day paid the lowest rates, and they used all sorts of cost-cutting measures like reusing and repurposing art and recycling art to cut costs and save money. And I look at Marvel, and again, they're doing the exact same thing, because Marvel right now is in a place of desperation. And they're in a place of desperation because they have people in positions of leadership who are not publishing professionals, and they have people working in on their comics who are supposed to be comic pros who know nothing about the business of trade publishing. They know nothing about the business of marketing comics. They know nothing about trying to really go out here and find new areas of distribution, because one of the big problems with comic books today is the direct market, and no one at Marvel Comics right now in editorial, like your CB Cebulski right now, is focused on dealing with this distribution issue, which has created a bottleneck overall. Because I look at this decision to have IDW outsource Marvel's publications, and it's not really going to have that much of an impact because most comic books today are still going to be sold in comic book stores. So you have these middle grade comics being published by Marvel, but they're not being published and distributed by to places where middle grade children go, because back when I was a teenager, comic books were primarily sold in supermarkets, grocery stores, drug stores, newsstands. There were numerous venues where you could get a comic, and the reason why you could get a comic in numerous venues was due to the concept of returnability. And in order for you to get those large numbers of sales, you have to provide returnability to retailers. Retailers will not touch a product unless that product is returnable. But many people in the comic book industry, they are running around in circles, not understanding that you have to have returnability if you want to enter numerous retail venues, because the retailer needs to be able to return unsold product for store credit and be able to get credit on next month's issues. And it's those returns that give you an indicator to what is selling and what is not selling. So when I take a look at this whole plan to have IDW go out here and produce Marvel Comics, again, it's a cost-cutting measure, it's a desperate measure, but it's not an effective measure because you're still selling comic books in comic book stores, and comic book stores are going out of business due to the poor product being produced. And all you're doing is putting two products on the shelf that are not going to be in places that kids are. And by the time they wind up in a place where kids are, when they come to trade format, you've already taken so many losses on this book that you're not going to have any real profit, because in publishing, something like a trade paperback is supposed to be a secondary revenue stream. A trade paperback is a compilation of those single issues, and that's where you get a secondary revenue stream. Your primary revenue stream is supposed to be those comic books that are on the shelves of the comic book stores. But again, middle grade kids don't really go to comic book stores because they don't know where the comic book stores are. And the whole outsourcing plan, as I see it, is completely illogical, because IDW right now is a struggling publisher. They already had a 95% profit loss last year, and Marvel giving them this license, really, it doesn't really help them but so much, because they're on the brink of bankruptcy, and Marvel itself is on its way to going out of business itself. So you have two companies which are on the brink, and they're basically trying to stay afloat, but their plan to stay afloat is a fundamentally flawed plan, because with you outsourcing your books to a publisher that's on the brink of bankruptcy, it doesn't really help that publisher, and it doesn't really help Marvel Comics, because the big problem with Marvel Comics is that the quality of their publications have declined, because many of their comic professionals just don't understand how to produce publications for audiences all over the world, because you really do not need a line that specifically targets middle grade customers because we've had those before with Marvel Adventures, and we've had them before with other Marvel products. But what you need to have is a core foundation of great stories featuring Marvel characters, because that's what made Marvel Comics a strong and competitive brand. You had great Marvel Comics being produced primarily by great comic pros back in the 1980s and the early 1990s, and it was those comics that were accessible to younger readers. I remember being a kid, and what made me want to read Marvel Comics was they had great stories that were accessible to readers of all ages, and the content in them was appealing to readers of all ages. We don't get that today from today's comic pros who have decided they want to inject identity politics into their comics and have forsaken the tenets of good comic book storytelling and forgotten how to build these characters based on their previous histories. No, instead of focusing on the histories of these characters and the richness of the catalog, many of these modern comic pros, they want to push their own far left agendas or their own social justice agendas, or create Mary Sue characters like your Riri Williams and interject them into the adventures of Marvel instead of trying to stay true to Marvel's long storied history and Marvel's long storied brand. And if they went and hired a lot of the seasoned comic pros that were out here, veterans, to be editors or go out here and look for young, promising talent like I have seen on numerous Facebook boards and just looking on Google at numerous artists out here, they would be able to create quality comics that would sell far more than what's being sold right now. But when you see a company like Marvel Comics outsourcing the publication of something like middle grade comics to an IDW publisher, a competitor, that's not a good sign for Marvel Comics. And the reason why it's not a good sign is because it clearly shows me that the executives at Disney do not have faith in Marvel's editors right now. They don't have confidence in their ability to produce quality publications, and they don't have confidence in the products that they produce, nor do they believe that these people are competent enough to produce a product that would be appealing to a middle grade audience. Because when you take a look at the comics they produce right now, they show us that a lot of these people just don't understand how to create comics for a traditional audience of the middle-aged adult males. So they really don't understand how to create comics for middle-aged children who are from anywhere from 11 to 14 years old, and they don't understand the whole concept of creating something without infusing identity politics or social justice, and they don't understand the concept of just writing a basic, simple story where good guys take on bad guys. Now, I understand the concept of writing stories where good guys take on bad guys because I've been doing it for over 15 years. I've been doing it for the last 5 years with the ISIS series and the E-Steam series, and I understand that there is certain content that is appropriate for younger readers, and that there is certain content that is appropriate for older readers, and that there is certain content that is all ages. And all ages content is something that middle grade readers can enjoy and adult readers can enjoy. And that's something that Marvel Comics isn't producing. And when you have executives who have no confidence in the people who work there and have to outsource, it shows us, again, a company in crisis, because Marvel Comics, the industry leader, should not have to go out here and outsource the publication of its most popular characters to IDW. They should have competent people working in their editorial department who should be able to form a team of editors to come together to hire a group of freelancers to create these kind of books. And all of this work should have been done in-house under that whole Marvel Rising label, and that whole Marvel Rising imprint should have been what they should have done to appeal to middle grade readers. That's all they needed to do. But this decision to outsource, again, shows me a complete failure of leadership, a complete lack of confidence in leadership, and it shows me that Marvel Comics, as we know it, sooner rather than later, is going to be out of business as a publishing house. And instead of them publishing Marvel Comics at Marvel Comics Publishing House, what they're going to do in the future is outsource these characters to competing publishers like your IDWs, like your Dark Horse, and many other companies, and then use that licensing money in order to be a revenue stream for Disney. And what that's going to do at the end of the day is it's going to lower page rates for artists, lower story rates for writers, and it's going to lower royalty costs to writers. And this is all bad for the industry, which is already struggling, because if Marvel Comics goes this route of outsourcing, what it's going to do is it's going to prevent many freelancers from being able to make a living working at a company like Marvel Comics, and they're going to have to wind up going out here and getting some sort of other employment to supplement the skills that they have right now. And many of these people who were editors, they're going to be unemployed, and they're going to have a hard time finding work, because in publishing, it's very hard to find work as an editor because it doesn't pay that much, and oftentimes many of these houses go out of business very quickly. And with the rise of self-publishing, there may not be many opportunities for many of these people who were once editors of Marvel Comics. And as they look at the decline of the comic book industry, they're going to have to wonder to try to find a way to make a living. If you'd like to try some of my SJS Direct publications like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, The Temptation of John Haynes, the Spinsterella trilogy, and my men's issues books, you may do so by clicking the link in the description box to Amazon.com. There you will find all my titles in paperback and e-reader formats. And if you want to help me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, John Haynes, A Conversation with Death. The man who rules the world and the angel of darkness take on a horde of demons in this inaugural John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, A Conversation with Death for 99 cents on Kindle or in paperback today.